One of the things that we're going to talk about today is honesty, and it's going to be blunt, blatant, in your face. Louisville Slugger, here is the hornet's nest whack at what it is, fair housing, and what is going on in today's market. There is nothing off limits question-wise. This is the safe space to ask those questions. I ask for a little bit of grace since I'm trying to talk to the camera and there are still people in the room, so I'm occasionally going to glance at them because I feel like I'm ignoring them, so I'm sorry about that. But some of the most common violations in fair housing, as well as some of the things that are difficult to talk about. So I typically, if you've been to some of my classes, know that I come with a black box warning. That means that I will say something. I'm doing that so that you are getting the benefit. I'm here to help you learn. This isn't to hear myself talk. This is because I want you to have a safe space. So any of those people that are on right now that have their cameras off, I need you to turn them on or I can't have credit for that. Darwin has been gracious enough to be secretary today and make sure that everybody that put their name in the chat is going to get credit for this. As he mentioned, it is a 1-hour fair housing credit where you will also get the fair housing credit if you need it in the NAR 2-hour requirement for the 3-year cycle. So some of the objectives today are going to be talking about lawsuits, liability, and lost licenses. Lost licenses. People can lose your real estate license, your ability to make money based on some of these violations. This is a safe space today, so none of the questions which you can put into the chat or we'll have a Q&A at the end. You can also email me or Darwin and ask any specific questions that may prompt an additional hot topic. We also are going to talk about what today's roadmap is going to be and some of the shoppers and what fines are associated with those shoppers. So right now, there are shoppers in our market. They are in Oakland County, Macomb County, and parts of Detroit specifically. Some headlines. These things don't go away. In Hamtramck, a 1968 race bias case was just settled, and the city is now currently finishing over 200 homes for Black families that were displaced decades ago. Source of income, if you don't know, was signed into law in the state of Michigan in January. Landlords with 5 units or more cannot refuse Social Security insurance, SSI, child support, etc. That includes alimony. So if you have a separated spouse who is collecting alimony and child support for 4 or 5 children, they may qualify in excess for a mortgage, and they will not be denied for that. Some of the other headlines are race-based appraisal gaps. Yes, appraisers are now being looked at. This is from the 2024 report from the National Fair Housing Administration. 87 national appraisal-based complaints. Michigan specifically was named as a hotspot. Detroit landlord settled a $32,500 race claim just in 2023. Assistance animals, we're going to talk about that for a little bit. Assistance animals are not, I have a dog, he's wearing a very special vest, and he goes and opens the door for me. That's excellent. That is an assistance animal. It is also a service animal. I come back from some kind of service where I have PTSD and I require an emotional support animal, my little potbelly pig that I'm going to take and pet, my chihuahua that I'm going to walk around with. That is protected in the state. So there are several different levels of protection. Fair Housing Center bulletins from 2024.
You reminded one more.
I do, so sorry, have to remind some of the people with their cameras off that we're going to kind of go through some of this stuff pretty quick, and then it'll be a little bit more interactive. Some federal framework, and like I told you, there's different levels to this. Federal Fair Housing Administration has been around since 1968. We learned all of this stuff when we took our licenses. race, color, national origin, religion, sex, including SOGI. How many people know what SOGI is? Get any hands or thumbs up on those? Sexual orientation, gender identity. Those are specific classes now that are protected, both federally and by state. Key touch points for that would be ads, steering, lending, appraisals. Oh, what does that sound like in our neighborhood? Oh, he's gay. He needs to move to Ferndale. He wants to live in Birmingham, but Birmingham is just too uppity, and we're gonna have him move. He'd be much happier if he lived in Royal Oak is very nice. This is steering. This is something that we've known as steering, but when our clients come to us and they say things like, I really want to live in a neighborhood where I'm comfortable with people like me. It is not for us to decide what like me means. Like me is like them. They need to define that. As a real estate agent, the only thing that we are concerned with is, that's fantastic. How many bedrooms does that for me have? Do you need a sidewalk? Tell me about your job. Well, my girlfriend and I are just getting married. We've adopted 4 dogs, and we already have 1 child. Okay, so 3 bedrooms. Do you work from home? I do, but I can deal with just putting the desk in the kitchen. I like to walk around my floor with my computer on a table. Okay, hardwood floors, first floor, primary. You notice I didn't say master, first floor primary. Okay, so that's a good thing to know. Dogs probably need a fenced backyard. It has absolutely nothing to do with their race, their color, their natural origin, their sexual orientation, nothing. People want to be heard. Our job is to listen to them. ADA Title III, public areas and multifamily. These are leasing offices, must be accessible. This is ADA compliance. Renovations and new builds are usually the first touch points. Section 504, which is the Rehab Act of, you read that right, 1973. This is nothing new. Disability rights in federally funded housing. These are rural development and low-income housing properties that are run through HUD or run through the USDA. This is out in the counties where you see most of these. The AFFH, which is HUD, affirmatively furthering fair housing, little tongue twister there, that's fabulous, requires every city that takes HUD dollars to analyze barriers and to act appropriately. So these are where you get these rezoning fights and what I call NIMBY meetings. So NIMBY is short for not in my neighborhood, not in my neighborhood. So the NIMBY meetings are, oh, well, you want a group home? Oh, that's fantastic. I absolutely support that. I think there should be group homes. I think the mentally challenged, retarded little people should have a place to live. That's great. Can we maybe move that facility, over there? Because at the end of my cul-de-sac, like, we really don't want group homes there. This is a NIMBY meeting. And what that does is it perpetuates, one, bias. It perpetuates over meetings. You have more ordinances, and that's where we get to the Michigan law. Yes, question.
Hey guys, just one last chance. You got to be on camera. So there's a few of you that are not on camera, no credit. So last chance, hate to be that guy, but it's what we've got to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Darwin. So let's say we are sort of compliant to federal law and we get called out for that federal law. Michigan can tack on to that. So Michigan statute, which is LCAR, Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act, everybody's heard of this one, that protects age, marital status, height, weight, sexual orientation, and gender identity. Those are specific to LCAR in addition to the federal mandates. PDCDR is another one that mirrors the federal disability rules but covers smaller landlords. Written accommodations, There's processes that are required for that. You know, as a side note, I put on there a hot point for Elkhart was the first state to list weight and height since 1978 as a protected class. Again, this is nothing new. It seems that with the way our political things have moved from a very progressive to a very conservative to a very progressive, that we have forgotten that some of these things that we're doing have been around for a very long time. It's similar to the way that you had a lot of people in the market react to the NAR lawsuit. Oh my God, we need buyer's agency. Yes, since 1993. So this is kind of along the same lines. This class is just to refresh how important it is for us as real estate agents to separate what we do and how we act with the public. We are never going to fix the public. The public remains that right in this country to have those opinions. We take a pledge with the code of ethics that we would hold ourselves to a higher standard. In addition to that, we, through our licensure, say that we will hold ourselves to a higher standard with law. And it should be said that when the federal law is applied, that is not the cap of the law, but it is the baseline, the bare minimum of where we start. And Michigan law is on top of that. SOI bills, which were source of income, 205 and 207 respectively, in April of this year, are now protected. Landlords with less than 5 units are exempt, but local ordinances are closing the gap. So where Michigan law says landlords that own less than 5 units don't have to apply the SOI rules that are about the state, local ordinances like Royal Oak say, oh, yes, you do, even if you own 1 unit, so that SOI is protected. Washtenaw County is a big hotbed for that right now. Yes.
Dimitri's got a question.
Dimitri, you have a question. I can't see it. I don't know how to see it.
Should pop up there.
Oh, thank you.
Dimitri.
Yeah, my question regarding the 5 units or more, does it mean units in a apartment complex, or it means 5 properties, period? Because I have clients, for example, who own multiple properties, but they're single family homes.
It is 5 units in one establishment unless the local ordinance identifies them separately. So it's actually one or the other or both. Sorry to be so evasive, but with the way the statute is written, it is for a unit, a single individual box that has more than 5. But local ordinances may address smaller landlords and apply the same rules.
So I should check with the municipality on that.
Yes,
Right.
that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
So I've been talking about this local layer cake. Wayne, Detroit bans SOI and gender identity since 2009. So in Detroit and Hamtramck specifically, Hamtramck is under a federal consent decree for racial integrations. Hamtramck is a hotbed for Bangladeshi. There's a lot of influx of immigrants that have come into Detroit and Hamtramck. Their integration and their rights have been very seriously trampled upon because they don't understand English as a first language. Their representation isn't what it could be. So it is a bit of a hotbed if you're doing business in that area. Oakland County, even though it's the most affluent county in our state, still has county fair housing program issues. Those are usually familiar status. Hey, I don't want all those kids living in my apartment. I have a house that I'm renting. It's 3-bedroom. You have 5 kids. You can't do that. So those occupancy rules are something that are handled by the municipality. Spike in the disability and animal complaints is also very popular in Oakland and Macomb counties. You are only allowed to ask 2 questions. Do you have a disability? And you cannot ask which one. And does that animal provide an assistance or service. And so, you know, outside of emotional support animals, which are protected not under HUD and federal, but under the state of Michigan as service animals, there was a lawsuit in Ferndale that was a $35,000 emotional support cat. So you want to check local municipalities and just follow the laws. I should note that those laws go beyond pit bull bans. If you have a tenant that is coming into either your establishment or one of your clients, and you are in a municipality that has a pit bull ban, or because of insurance reasons, the insurance company will not have pit bulls on the property with tenants. If that dog is a legitimate service animal, the pit bull is exempt. If the insurance company doesn't exempt them, my recommendation is to have your client get a new insurance company, because the fees associated with not following the law and this far exceed what you would spend on a new insurance policy. In math, that looks like $1,800 a year of higher insurance coverage versus $25,000 or $35,000 in fines, where those fines are going to move from local municipality to county to state. So those fines can triple or quadruple if it hits a federal level. Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti, I know everybody in real estate kind of chuckles. Washtenaw seems to be its own separate entity. It's like, here's what Macomb County's doing. Here's what Oakland and Wayne and Genesee, and then there's Washtenaw. It's a completely separate animal. Pardon?
Is the people may have some documents that this dog is service animal?
Excellent question. So the question is, if the animal is documented as a service animal, the answer to that question is no. So there are a lot of scams out there that say, hey, you can fly with the dog, just go ahead and pay this fee and you get this ESA a certificate for the animal. The handler, the person with the disability, has the right to train their own animal. It does not have to be through an official school of any kind. So therefore, there would be no official paperwork. If you are in a match between someone and you needed that paperwork, you can have a doctor sign off on the paperwork stating that the animal is necessary, but you're not allowed to ask if that animal can perform that task. You can't ask them to perform it on site. So let's say, for example, and I use this quite often, I'm an epileptic, and this little cute doggy here, this is my epileptic seizure warning dog. And she barks when I'm about to have an epileptic fit. So you can stand there and stare at me until she barks and I have an epileptic fit, and I can prove it to you, but you don't have the right to do that. I have the right to tell you that that is what the dog does, and this is the reason I have the dog, and therefore you have to accept it. And that means no pet fees. They're not a pet, they're a service animal. So at that stage, if you charge pet fees to emotional support animals in Michigan, in Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb County specifically, you are in violation. You cannot charge a pet fee on a service animal. If they have 5 dogs and 1 is a service animal, you may charge 4 dogs a service fee, not the service animal. Whether the assistance animal is a true ADA compliant service animal, I can't bend over from the waist down to pick things up, or if it is an assistance animal that's protected under like a PTSD or something else.
Condos that do not allow pets, what happens regarding assistance animal?
Condos that are not allowed to have pets cannot say they're not allowed to have pets in the state of Michigan. You are not allowed to have pets. Service dogs welcome is a better way to put that into your listings, because no pets allowed is true. There are no pets allowed, except service animals are welcome. So to be more specific and clear in your listing is a much better way to go. Pit bulls are not exempt from service animals. If the pit bull serves a purpose, the pit bull ban does not count. Livingston, you can see some of these other on here with Genesee and Flint. They're a little bit ahead of the SOI game, and it might be because of the area. Lapeer has a specific city code that does mimic a lot of LCAR and includes disability and familiar status. And I put, you know, at the end there, the .com, you can look some of these up if you need to.
What about, for our Lansing area agents, anything that you know regarding that area yet?
Specifically in Lansing,
Yeah.
meaning what?
Well, just anything like you've got Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, anything for them that we've learned as
I
we
didn't.
continue to
Mm-mm.
grow, okay.
I can get some information on Lansing specific, but I went out as far as Lapeer and Genesee.
Cool.
So cats are not a protected class federally. American Disability Association has dogs, domesticated dogs, and miniature horses are the only two service animals that are protected under the ADA. Assistance animals are any animal that produces a service that is protected under the class within Michigan or the county or the state local, or I'm sorry, the municipality local ordinance. And they change.
Can you ask to confirm if emotional support animal is registered as such, or do you just have to take their word?
An emotional support animal is considered an assistance animal. They are protected under Michigan. And because it depends what they're an assistance for, so if they're an emotional support, they have PTSD or depression or suicidal tendencies, they have a recognized disability under the list, which is found online at michigan.gov. That list will determine if the animal is in support emotionally to one of those protected associated diagnoses.
So the aspect of asking, is the animal registered?
You cannot ask if the animal's registered. There is no such thing as an emotional support animal registry. There is no such thing as a registry of any animal of any kind, period. I mean, quite literally, if I walked through the door with a miniature horse and said, "This is my service animal," you may ask two questions. Do you have a disability? Yes, I do. You cannot ask me what it is. Do I have one? Yes, I have a disability. The second question, does the animal assist you in that disability? Yes, it does. That is it. That is all you are allowed to ask. If it comes, you know, with insurance companies and so forth and such, consult an attorney because that is not allowed. You are not allowed to ask those questions.
Documentation to verify that you have that.
There is no official documentation. So when I walked in with the horse and Darwin asked me, "Is that animal a service animal?" And I said, "Yes." And then he asked me, "Do you have a need for a service animal?" And I said, "Yes." And this animal produces a service. And I said, "Yes." That's it. Who trained the animal? I did. Do you have documents? I can write it on a napkin for you with a Crayola crayon because that's all it's worth. You do not need documentation. If there is a specific reason why you need documentation, then you need to address those independently and individually. For example, I'm thinking off the top of my head, I am renting a room in my home. Common area is the entire house, and I am renting just a bedroom. I am severely allergic to cats. The renter comes in and has an emotional support cat. I reside there, I own the home, and I can now say I can't house that cat because I have an allergy to that cat and I reside in that home. If you are renting your home and you live somewhere else, that cat can reside there. Does that make sense? Okay.
So there's two questions, and I think it's kind of in the same direction. Who determines that the animal is acceptable by law? And it kind of goes back to the previous, which might be the simple. Can you ask for the doctor's or for a doctor's confirmation letter?
I would let the insurance company ask for the doctor's confirmation letter. I don't think as a real estate agent, I would do that because the law is pretty clear that you cannot ask for that. So if it's between your client and the insurance company, get the heck out of the middle. You're not paid to be a go-between between your insurance company and the client. You're paid to either find the property or list the property. Stick to what is in your lane, number one. Number two, no, you cannot ask for paperwork, so don't.
As an acceptable by law, is there an animal that is, maybe it's like, are there any that
Domesticated
not?
animals. Yeah, if somebody has got a raccoon that they claim is an emotional support animal, I think I would take that one on or encourage my client to take that one on. But yeah, raccoons and skunks that still spray, I don't think are something I would want in any of my rental houses. So I think those are on the cusp of, you know it when you see it kind of thing,
Mhm.
right? Okay. But it is not up to us to judge those things. And I think that's where this is coming from. So when you have somebody saying, well, I have an emotional support skunk, that is something that is between the client and the client, not the real estate agent to make those determinations. It puts your licensing at risk. It puts the company at risk. And that's what we don't want to have. Disability assistance animals, that equals ESA. Emotional support animals are protected. So simple things like ramps, parking closer to the door, these are things that we need to let our clients know are normal and accepted things to change or modify reasonable accommodation to allow people with disabilities to be there. SOI vouchers, we talked about that, familial status, using terms like adults only, occupancy limits, or the HOA doesn't allow that in the pool, that is unacceptable verbiage and should be very seriously scrubbed from your listings. Race, color, appraisal bias, steering, and love letters. So if you remember and have read, and everybody should put their hand up, they have all read our contract, it specifically asks if listing love letters are to be shown or not shown. And it is my opinion, not only as an agent and an instructor and a manager, that that absolutely 100% of the time should be checked. No way. You do not want to expose your client to the possibility that they made a decision on something other than the actual numbers in front of them.
What about the situation
Can I ask a quick question too?
where the client sends a love letter to the owner of the house?
Okay, so some of you know I sit as chair of the grievance committee. There was a very specific case. It is a law case now where, as you know, as real estate agents, anything attached to the purchase agreement is a contract. And by law, we have to present the contract as written. An individual wrote a listing love letter in full color with pictures. And yes, they were a very colorful bunch. They attached it as an addendum, marked it as an addendum in the purchase agreement, therefore forcing the listing agent to present the full color listing love letter to the seller, putting the seller in a trick bag because, you know, you're not supposed to know this stuff. So in very few circumstances, those come up. Sometimes they'll leave it in the mailbox. I pulled them out of the mailbox and shredded them. Sorry. Once if I'm the listing agent, once the homeowner has made a decision, oftentimes I will ask them if they'd like to see the letters, but they've already made their decision. The listing love letter is no longer a part of that decision. So I really choose B in this case. B wrote a letter. Here's a letter to B. Oh my goodness, I made a great decision. The homeowner's happy, the buyer's happy, everyone's compliant. Sending them out with a bunch of love letters is a very, very bad idea.
Question,
Yes.
why even have that on our purchase agreement if we're supposed to check no? Why even give a choice if that's not the right?
Because everything, it's an excellent question, Deanna, thank you. Everything in real estate is up to the client. It is absolutely up to the client, 100% of what they want. Our job is to mitigate and reduce their liability, not only to our clients, but to our broker, as much as possible. That is not always the case. Sometimes clients make poor decisions, even against our advice. I think you should list your house at $100,000. Well, I think it's worth $200,000. Well, I don't think it's going to sell, and it sits on the market for $200,000 because that is their home. And our job is to try and help them make good decisions. So my guess, Deanna, and I can find out from the person who wrote that contract, but my guess would be that it gives the client an opinion, and you get to learn more about the client and how they want contracts specifically given to them in presentation. But it should be a good talking point where if it wasn't in the contract, there would be no way to bring that up to go, hey, you know, listing love letters happen, but we really highly encourage you not to view them.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Deanna, I jump in on this. I think everybody remembers an old Latin proverb. Many of you have not been with me before to where you haven't heard it, but the old Latin proverb of anus protectus. Okay, I'm looking to see if you are all giggling about that, but that is, we're covering our backside. We're placing it upon the seller to tell us whether or not to present it if we receive it. Okay, so it literally is just a let's take care of ourselves and put the onto the seller. We can tell them, I would recommend that you don't receive it, so it will prevent any potential risk for discrimination. Okay. And I think there was a question. We'll see. Can you write an introduction to your buyer when you put in an off? Can you write an introduction to your buyer? Lisa, I think you'll have to expand upon that, what you mean by that.
You can ask the buyer to be introduced as long as the information doesn't hit one of the protected classes. And if I'm being as transparent in this as possible, every single person falls into one of the protected classes, amen, period. If you take a look at the room where you are, if you look in a car next to you, if the next time you're at a grocery store or a concert or anything, every single human walking on the planet falls into one of those protected classes. They kind of did it that way on purpose. Specifically, I'm going to jump back into the class here, number 5, sex and SOGI. So sexual orientation and gender identity. He, she, they. This is a real hot topic now. Sexual orientation is not the same thing as gender identity. If I identify as a male, but I'm attracted to women, I am not a lesbian, right? How many people are familiar with the words? We don't talk about them. I'm in my 50s. I remember stuff on TV when it wasn't cool, when Arthur Ashe came out and when AIDS was out and the 80s were on and we were looking at Queen and Freddie Mercury and some other stuff trying to figure out what was going on. And that is really when things became mainstream. And I beg to differ. Anybody who reads anything about history, particularly Victorian history, woman on woman and man on man sex is very normal. That's literally what a page was back in New England times. We're going to talk about some of these words. You see LGBT. LGBT is not the full alphabet. It is LGBTQIA2S+. This is the accepted Michigan State University description of how to identify this segment of our population. A lesbian is a woman attracted to another woman. Gay is someone who's attracted to the same gender. It's usually men, but it could be women. Bisexual is an attraction to more than one gender. Trans is a person whose gender identifies differ from the sex they were assigned at birth. At the bottom of this list, you'll see cisgender. That's a person whose gender identity matches the sex they were assigned at birth. I was assigned a woman. If I'm attracted to women and I was assigned to women, my sexual orientation and my gender identity align. That does not have to be the case, and each one of those are now specifically protected classes, not just sex. Because when that was just the protected class, we were hearing things like, oh, I thought you meant male or female. Well, what if I don't identify as male or female? Ace or asexual is someone who doesn't have any sexual experience at all. Intersex is someone who is born biologically with both. Maybe I'm a girl on top and a male underneath. Maybe I'm post-operational trans and I have only top surgery, but I identify as a woman. Those things, like queer and questioning, define those specific transitions. Non-binary is someone who doesn't fit. They feel traditionally those categories of male and female don't fit them at all. And some people are gender fluid. They've changed, or what we call now abrosexual. Their sexual identity and sexual preference changes over time as they grow. As a prepubescent, they were in a traditional household. They were brought up that women marry men. They were taught in church that women marry men. Then they go to college and they figure out that there's a whole plethora of stuff that they can play with. They now are lesbian. And then they decide that they really don't like all the boobs bunching around. So they're going to have top surgery and they're going to identify as a male, but they're still attracted to women. These are things that are actually happening to really normal and regular people. This is stuff that we need to be able to talk about. Everybody's online worried about red and blue. And we know we're talking about Trump and Biden and politics. When we talk about politics, politics is not a protected class. Living next door to someone that you think is a red person, a political class that is going to attack you based on your sexual identity is a problem. Are you allowed to say, oh, well, if you're gay, you don't want to live in that neighborhood. The rights for gays in that neighborhood are less. No, that's steering. It is up to the clients to make these decisions. But knowing that these are issues that are important to your clients is something that we need to be open to having discussions about. Yes, ma'am.
That steering if somebody says they want to be in a community with the same political thoughts.
If you have a client that comes to you and says, I would like to be in the same community as my political affiliation, is that steering, is the question. The answer to that question on its face is no, because the politics is not a protected class. However, if the intent of the questioner is to live in a neighborhood that is uber conservative because they're not interested in living next to gay people, queer people, weird people, retarded people, any of those protected class, fat people, okay, then the intent of the questioner is to change or mask the question as an appropriate question, which is not protected and is now a protected class. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Yes.
So if someone is looking and they're a customer non-compliant, so they come and say they want to live in fabulous Ferndale. It's essentially implied that they are looking to live in a gay populated community. Is that then, if you were to say, yeah, that's a great neighborhood, is that then steering them to?
Okay. Excellent question. So the question is, a customer, non-client, love the way that was worded, approaches you and says, I would like to live in fabulous Ferndale. What do you do? How do you handle that as an agent? The client has come to you with an identified block of neighborhood. They want to live in Ferndale. They called it fabulous. The assumption is that they're gay, correct? So the assumption is that they're gay, or they're announced that they're gay and they want to live in fabulous Ferndale. The client has identified the neighborhood. It is not steering because the client identified the neighborhood. If that same client and customer client, you would sign them because they're totally on. But that same customer client came and said, I'd like to live in a gay acceptable community, you are not allowed to identify that community. That is steering. So as long as they are in that, and sometimes they don't know, hey, look, I'm here, I moved from Timbuktu, and I'd like to live where I can walk down to the local gay bar because I'd like to hang out, the karaoke's better, whatever their deal is, right? Then you can give them several neighborhoods that match what? How many bedrooms do you need? Do you need a sidewalk? Do you work from home? Do we need hardwood floor? Okay, those homes and properties are available in these neighborhoods that have walkable, like if they want to walk to something, they're not in North Oakland County. They're not in Davisburg where you have to drive, 30 minutes to hit Kroger, right? They're going to be in a city. Well, I want to be within 15 minutes of downtown Detroit where my job is. Fantastic. What's within 15 minutes of Detroit? List those neighborhoods. Let them drive through the neighborhoods in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening. Because if you don't know the neighborhood, your clients have to live there, and the rock band practices every night at 4 o'clock, that's something that you want your clients to know. Another question?
To say something is walkable though, isn't that then going against the ADA?
No, it's a walkable neighborhood according to the AARP Walkable Index, which is something that's indexed that you can give them a report on. So it's a walkability index that's provided by AARP. You're not making the determination that it's walkable. You're reporting a demographic statistic based on something found online.
And we're not, it's the term, don't take offense to the term, which could be taken offense at some
Yep.
point. But it is a term used,
Walkable
doesn't
neighborhood.
mean, right.
Yeah, where we get into trouble with ADA stuff is when it's like up 5 flights of stairs, hope you like cardio. I think that might be a little bit more offensive in ADA than, walkable neighborhood, because even people that may have a disability can still want to walk to a local store or a coffee shop. But that is a good question. Thank you. Any other questions from the gallery there? Okay.
Yeah, but I think Juliet just put, simple, don't assume, correct?
That is a great thing. Boy, assume. Who said that the other day? An ass out of you and me. Assuming is a very, very bad idea. So here's a couple of quick agent scenarios. The MLS remark saying no Section 8. And I'm going to tell you, unbelievably, this stuff really happened. These remarks are actually off of the MLS. One of which I wrote down here, which I honestly couldn't believe that was in there, but it said, no Black families. You can't put that in there, just so you know, you can't.
That was in the MLS.
You can't write that down. I'm just saying that you can't do that. Interestingly enough, now that I brought up Black families, I'm going to talk real briefly about racism. When we talk about racism, a lot of what we talk about is white on Black racism. It is not. Racism is Black on Black. Do you hear that? It was Black on Black. Dang, ran out of toner on that one. Black people who are Black, very dark skin, do not like light-skinned Blacks. Light-skinned Blacks do not like dark-skinned Blacks. Chinese people don't like Japanese people. Sikhs and Sunnis, they don't like each other in some instances. Indian and non-Indian, Pakistani and holy cow, what's going on in the Middle East? Same sandbox, nobody can get along, right? All of that is racism, all of it, all of it. I don't like Mexican people. The food's terrible. I love tacos, I'm just kidding. But these are things that you're gonna hear. I had a client, my very first client had 2 Black Panther concrete statues in the front, lived in Taylor, and Taylor Tucky, they called it, okay? Lived in Taylor with 2 Black statues. I'm not selling to Black people. Woman, you have 2 black painted Panthers in the front of your house and you, on a corner lot with a barn, and you do not want black people buying this house. You're crazy. But I mean, 2 Black Panthers, like, did you miss the 60s? I mean, that was the whole point, right? Okay. Needless to say, we had to move past that, or I wasn't going to have my first client. So these are things that happen all the time. So let's get back to the slide. No Section 8. We can replace that with neutral qualifications. Like, I understand you don't want Section 8. I know the paperwork is painful, but if you're going to go into the market, you have to be compliant. And if you want me to represent you in that market, you need to be compliant. So let's talk about their credit score and their income and what things that we need to move forward correctly. Another one is the seller wants a buyer who's going to fit in. Well, fit in, what does that mean, fit in? They don't like fat people. They want to fit into jeans. They want to fit in based on their sexual preference. They want to fit in to canasta. Are they looking for a 4th for euchre? Like, what does fit in mean, right? So help your clients express themselves, listen to what they have to say, give them the space to express what they're meaning by things, and then pivot. Fair housing law requires that we choose offers based on price and terms. So I understand that you want them to fit in. Let's see if they fit into these 2 important boxes first, because now we're compliant with fair housing. Landlord refuses the pit bull service dog. Number 3 is a charm on this one today. You can request documentation, but you have to drop the breed band and the pet fees because they're not a pet at that point. They do not have to provide documentation. The distinction is what you can ask for and what you're entitled to get. Again, sticky wicket, and I suggest that it's a conversation that happens outside of your representation of that particular client. Buyer love letters, strip the identifiers. So when Deanna asked the question, what happens when our client says they want to read all the love letters? Redact them. Save the client from themselves. Take out the identifiers, use standardized forms, and then you shouldn't have problems with those. School quality reports. This is right up there with the walkability survey done by AARP. Can you say, great schools, gotta love it here? No, you can't. You can't say that this school system is better than the next. Greatschools.org can be on your business card, but you can't tell them what Great Schools says about any particular, and I know half the agents on here, I don't even know how many agents are on here, but I'm gonna bet a good body part that if you were to look into your careers, over half of the agents on this call right now have had in at least one listing, if not right now, Great Schools. Absolutely blatant no. You cannot give subjective ratings and never give your opinions. So I want to live in Troy, and the west side of Troy and the east side of Troy, there's like $100,000 discrepancy between the 2 sides. What gives? Troy school system gives. So this side of Troy calls more money because of the school system. Can I tell them that? No. Can I give them the website that goes A+ into infinity and then A- into infinity? Bingo. That's the distinction.
Well, but-
Simply right that this, it's a Troy school system, yeah. They just simply mentioned that way, right? Then the
It's-
client should, I think, investigate maybe more by himself. It's Chester Hill school system or Troy school system, instead of saying the grade school, this and that, right?
You can take the position that all school systems are great. You can take the position that it's the student within the school system that produces a great student. You can take any position other than this school is better than this school is an A. Yes, the A exists, but if they find on greatschools.org it's an A, and then they go to wicketywhack.com and it says it's a B-, and they bought the house because you told them it was an A school district and Wickety Whack says it's a B, you're liable.
So I think part of it is I can state as fact that it's
Yes.
in Troy, Athens.
Absolutely.
I can state that it's Troy High School. I can state fact, but I can't say that it's the great Troy Athens High School.
Correct.
The adjective is the issue. So we got another question. There's a couple of them, Holly, around this.
So like, yeah, I pulled it up. On our US News website, it says that Troy High is ranked 368th overall nationally. Would I be able to say that?
Could he state a fact found by saying on US News, it shows Troy High School is ranked?
I think that probably falls more into a legal question. I don't know if I would put it in public remarks. I would maybe reserve that for your open house and put it on your flyers in an open house as a statement. But I don't think I would open that door with a waving red flag to do that in public.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Even though you're stating all of it as the truth, because it's fact, it's there, it can
it's
be
not
found. It's somebody else's research and study. So questions that have popped in here. Let's see, how about popular schools or highly desired schools? I think, Glenda, you're saying, could I use those terms?
I think they're readily acceptable terms. I see those quite often. I've not personally come across any information that talks about those specific terms because the school isn't specifically named and there's no opinion. There's an opinion that it's a great school, but there's no specific school that you're talking is greater than another. So there's no comparative to it.
And let's see, what if your buyer asks you to look for houses in only one school district?
That's fine because the client has discerned the school district they desired. You are not making that determination for the client. At all times, we are representative of the client's wishes, even though we spend a great deal of time trying to figure out what exactly that is. There's one question behind you, Darwin, while you're looking.
Let me get these ones online and I'll come back to you.
Okay, cool.
Sally's making that she's showing one tonight where it says located in the award-winning Bloomfield Hills School District. Now that might be fact.
It is, and it's on that cusp, Sally, where I don't know. I don't see anything personally wrong with it. I don't have any personal knowledge that that would be incorrect. If it were to compare the school or give the school a rating or have an opinion, that's where you cross the line. But again, I personally would probably not put that in public remarks. I would reserve that for my flyer at my open house or my information. Great question. Thank you.
Yeah, and Livonia just put it here too, the thought of what you were just talking about with, can I state that the US News says, well, what if the website is updated in 2 days? Do you have your proof that that would still be there? So that's a great thought.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
true. So, when you take a snapshot in time and say the school was rated #1 and they do another poll the next month and it's now #2, you are now engaging in false information. So if you send them to the information source or the point, you're always in compliance. You protect yourself and you protect your house, which is what fair housing is about. Yep. Another question?
So a lot of times I'll say, check if you want to find out what the demographics of the neighborhood are or how good the schools are, here's where you can go look. Is that all right?
That's perfect. That is an excellent way to do that. Greatschools.org. Oh, I don't want to live in a house where there's a lot of crime. Is that a bad crime neighborhood? I saw on the news they had a shooting or something. Rochester Hills, right here, 1 year ago in like 2 weeks. Splash pad. They had a cockeyed shooter come running out of the woods, not mad about anything in particular, and just started shooting up people, right? Does that happen? Is Rochester a really, really bad place? No. Can you answer any of those questions? No. What do? Well, here's the phone number to the police station. You can call and ask about the police blotter. Many local newspapers will print what the police calls were, how many calls went out, I'm in an HOA in White Lake. Once a year at our HOA election meeting, we invite our lieutenant, who is a liaison from the White Lake Police Department, to our meeting, and he comes by and he says, you had 206 calls. There were 400 checks on the residence. There were 3 vandalism, 1 stolen car, 1 broken window, 1 errant baseball. All of those things are in what's called a roll call report and are completely legit when they come from the source. So I think in answering a lot of these questions, if you think about it this way, it's what's coming from the source. Send your clients to the source so that you're not in the middle.
Deanna has a question.
Deanna has a question.
Yeah, this is in agent scenarios. Like this happens a lot. Can we get into any trouble whatsoever with certain ethnic groups or buyers asking about the ventilation in the kitchen because of how they cook and the ethnic foods they make and things like
Okay.
that? Is that
Safe space? You got to be more specific.
I can't think of anything offhand right now, but sometimes they just ask about they need the ventilation over the stove to be X, A, B, or C because of the type of foods, Indian foods, or because of their national, who they are and what they cook and the smells and the smokes from their foods coming out. They need that. And can you ask the listing agent if they have it?
I would simply throw it out this way, and it kind of addresses all the questions throughout. If the customer is asking us or telling us, directing us that I need this, that is not us. That is on them. So if they're asking for that, Deanna, you would be fine because the customer, the client wants that. It's when we start going, oh, you're Indian, you like to use curry. So you're going to need a place with a really great ventilation system. That's steering. If we had a seller said that, look, I don't want to rent to Indian people because they cook with curry and that's going to make my house smell. Nope, can't do that. That's a protected class that we're working against.
So a person is looking, you have a client that's looking to focus on the feng shui of the house. If you're not familiar with that, do you focus it back on the amount of home or amount of like beds and those characteristics and then send them all out? Or do you then take
So is the client a renter?
They're looking to buy.
They're looking to buy. They have their own furniture. The feng shui would be done after the home is purchased.
So when I've had a Chinese client where they were a lesbian couple, one focused on feng shui, one didn't. But I had to then have the father come in and determine if the feng shui of the home was adequate for his daughter.
Sounds like an inspection contingency.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Sure. That's an inspection contingency. And that's client-driven inspection contingency.
That's what I was just going to say. Feng shui is not what I can determine.
And anybody here knows this. If you got an inspection contingency, I didn't like the height of the light socket. I'm out. You don't have to give a reason. We're just dissatisfied.
Can I just, by our purchase agreement, you don't have to give a reason.
Some do, but
Some you might, but ours does not, most do not.
So I know we got a couple more questions, but I want to make sure that if the laws are set up in layers and that infractions, even if it's just one tiny little infraction, might be 4 times bigger than you think because they do layer on top of each other. If you're not sure, ask your manager. I know a lot of the managers, they're pretty smart. And when they don't know something, they ask their district managers. And when the district managers don't know, they go to state. And then we have these people called lawyers that work for us. And then Chris Hendricks, I know he says he'll wear an orange jumpsuit, but please let's not put him there. Fair housing is more than being fair. It's about being legal and ethical. It is the backbone of what protects us and our ability to make all of these people's dreams come true and is our livelihood. And we are champions of that every day. And when we're not, we put it at risk for everyone that's involved. One last question.
there never something, where where somebody knows that an infraction has happened, they've been discriminated against? Is there some place that they should call?
Okay, excellent question. So someone has a grievance or a violation that they believe has occurred. What do they do? Okay, so this is a complicated answer. Let's assume, for the sake of this discussion, that you are on phones that day at the office and the person calls your office. The first thing you do is shut up and listen. Most people that have been egreged in any way, shape, or form just want to be heard. Validate them, listen to what they said, take copious notes. Then you would direct them to their rights. If it's an ethical violation against an agent, it goes to their board. If it's a legal violation, it can go to the state, it can go to a local municipality, or it can go to the federal government, or all of them. If it's a licensing issue, not a lockbox thing, it's a licensing issue. They lied, they don't actually have a license, they're using grandpa's license from 50 years ago, whatever it is, that's a LARA thing. So it really depends. One of the cases we had that came through the grievance board, it was an agent in a commercial property, and he was renting in Birmingham. He was a clothier, and the leaseholder was very interested throughout the process until the gentleman's Chinese last name showed up on a contract. Then all of a sudden the property was no longer available. So she had filed a grievance with the grievance board against the agent, and we bounced it. And she was very, very upset. She filed an appeal. We bounced it again. This young woman ended up in one of my classes, the Code of Ethics classes, and she was hot. And I explained to her that she absolutely had a client that had racially been discriminated against, but it wasn't an ethical complaint against the agent. This particular agent had a bigoted client that he did an excellent job protecting, quite frankly. With the string of emails and the specifics in that case, that agent took that bigoted member of the public and protected him against the lawsuit. So the agent wasn't at fault. There was no grievance ethically against the agent. The grievance was against the client with the other client. That becomes, I call Michigan Department, call the feds, and then have that investigated. There's absolutely a complaint. It's just where to file the complaint. So depending on the circumstances, it could be all of them.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for agents or the public to go to the wrong source to look for, we'll call it punishment, or to report, whatever you want to refer to it as. Deanna's got one here too.
One other question. What if you're showing houses and your client asks you if the seller is Indian? Or can I see the PRD name? The name on the PRD to see what kind of name it is?
Do you have the PRD on you?
Sometimes I do.
You can hand them the PRD and they can make their own determination by reading it, but you're not allowed to make the determination of whether that name is Indian or not.
I cannot answer that question if I know in fact that the name is a certain ethnic name.
You cannot, because it's your opinion.
Oh.
Would you be able to ask why you ask?
No.
I couldn't even ask, why are you asking about?
You can ask anything you want, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I wouldn't do that. Listen, my last name is Kotwicki. My last name is Kotwicki.
What is that?
I'm French and Irish.
Oh.
Okay, my maiden name is Hollie Aaron Coughlin. I couldn't be any more Irish. My grandfather fell off the damn boat. Okay, so you don't know anything about that person. Now, there are men, and I'm thinking of one in particular that is at my husband's church, who took his wife's last hyphenated name. He's a Lewis Lakin. So is he, Lewis from Lewis and Clark? Is he a Lakin? Don't even know where that's from. You can't answer those questions. You have no idea. And here is the kicker, Deanna. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
What if my name, and excuse me, sir, what is a very Indian name? Give me a very Indian name.
Anybody Indian name, last name?
Give me an Indian name.
Well,
It
mine
has
is
25 letters.
What is it?
Singh Patel.
Singh. Okay, my name is Patella Singh. I identify as Irish. I don't like curry. I eat potatoes and mash every day. The point is you have no idea how to interpret a simple name on a paper. It is not for you to interpret. If your clients drew a conclusion, that's your client.
I
You
had
cannot
buyer-
make that.
Yeah, I had buyer clients, and thank God I finally put in an offer and got accepted, because I've been showing them about 75 houses. They probably
It happens.
violated at least 50 of everything you talked about today.
I know, and it happens, and we're here to help protect them. Thank you for doing such a good job for your clients, Deanna. And I'm sure it shows. I saw your name over on the back door over here, so thank you.
I feel like I already took this class, just showing them.
Oh,
Your experience, right?
yes, I'm sure. I'm sure a lot of people have.
I think that's it, boss.
Any other questions? Okay, so this was a little bit of a primer. Thank you very much for everybody that came. If you have additional questions or you'd like me to come and talk specifically about a topic, I do teach classes at Knockbor with Darwin. You can go to look up the Knockbor classes. It doesn't matter if you're in Knockbor or one of the other groups. You can come by and see us.
So with that, gang, it kind of, I'll go pop back. It's like magic.
In and out.
Boom. Anyway, ends another hot topic, and this came because of a suggestion. So if you have them, guys, regardless of the subject matter, if we've got to talk about the sales skills, hey, pass it on, let me know, pass it on to your manager. And obviously I'm bopping around. We're bringing Hot Topic to you directly within your office. So very open for the invite. Guys, have a fantastic Tuesday. And as I try to remind you every week, go talk to people. That's where the business is at.